I didn't find out my husband was cheating the way you think. I found out when federal agents showed up at my door at 6:12 a.m., asking about money I had never seen, accounts I never opened, and a company I didn't even know existed. And when I called him, shaking, he laughed and told me I was confused, that I was always bad with finances, that everything was under control. But what he didn't know was I had already started pulling the statements he thought I'd never check. Hidden transfers, shell accounts, millions quietly moved in my name, and 3 weeks later, when the IRS and federal investigators raided his office, I stood there watching them carry out boxes of evidence, knowing this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was revenge, the kind that ends in handcuffs, a prison sentence, and the moment he finally looked at me and realized I was the one who brought him down. Chapter 1. I noticed the money was gone on a quiet Tuesday morning in early January 2025, 2 days after my third prenatal appointment in the last stretch of my pregnancy. I was sitting on the kitchen floor in our house in Irvine, my back against the refrigerator, one hand resting on my stomach, the other holding my phone. I had opened our account to check a grocery charge, something small, something normal, and instead I saw a number that did not belong to my life: $31,850. I stared at it longer than I should have. I refreshed the screen, closed the app, opened it again. The number did not change. The transactions below it looked scattered at first, just small withdrawals, 200 here, 300 there, sometimes less. Nothing that would make you panic if you saw it once, but there were too many. They stretched back farther than I expected. March 2022, then April, then all the way through the end of November 2024. I was 8 months pregnant, and suddenly I realized I did not know where my own life was going anymore. I pushed myself up from the floor slowly and set the phone on the counter. The kitchen looked the same as it always did. Clean counters, the coffee maker still warm, the soft light coming in through the window. Nothing in the room had changed, which somehow made it worse. I called the bank. The woman who answered sounded calm, almost detached, like this was just another account, another list of numbers. She verified my information, then walked through the transactions one by one. Each withdrawal had been approved. Each one had used the physical debit card. Most of them came from ATMs in Santa Ana and Anaheim. No alerts had been triggered. The pattern, she said, looked consistent over time. Consistent. I thanked her and hung up. For a second, I just stood there, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Then it hit me, not like panic, more like something settling into place. Every transaction was approved, which meant one thing: someone I trusted was doing this. I did not call Ethan right away. I did not send a message. I wanted to hear him say it in person. That night, after dinner, he was at the sink rinsing his plate when I walked over. I leaned my hand on the counter, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to sound like this was just another question in a long list of ordinary questions. "Hey," I said, "I was looking at the account earlier. Did we have some kind of big expense I forgot about?" He turned, water still running behind him, and gave me that same easy smile he had used for years, the one that always made things feel smaller than they were. "What do you mean?" "There are a lot of withdrawals," I said. "Small ones, but they add up. I just wanted to make sure everything is okay." He shut off the water and dried his hands, not in a hurry, not nervous, just calm. "You were probably overthinking it," he said. "We have been spending more lately. Baby stuff, remember?" I watched his face. Nothing moved. No hesitation, no confusion, nothing that looked like a mistake. "These go back a couple of years," I said. He let out a short laugh and stepped closer, resting his hand on my shoulder like he always did when he thought I needed to calm down. "Hey," he said, softer now. "You have a lot going on. The pregnancy, the stress, all of it. It can make things feel bigger than they are." I did not say anything. "I'm not saying something isn't off," he added, "but it's probably nothing serious. I'll look at it later." Later. Okay, I said. I let it drop right there. I didn't argue because reacting too early is how you lose control. That night, after he fell asleep, I went back downstairs with my laptop and sat at the kitchen table. I opened the account again, this time on a bigger screen, and started writing everything down: date, time, amount, location. I did not try to make sense of it. I did not let myself guess. I just collected. At some point, the baby shifted, a slow, steady movement that pulled me out of the numbers for a second. I rested my hand against my stomach and took a breath, then kept going. By the time I finished, the sky outside had started to lighten. I closed the laptop and sat there for a minute, staring at nothing. 2 days later, something started to form. It wasn't obvious at first, just a feeling that the dates were not random. I pulled up Ethan's work calendar on the family computer. I wasn't digging through anything hidden. I was looking at what was already there: late meetings, client dinners, off-site work. I picked a few dates and checked them against the withdrawals, then a few more. The pattern wasn't perfect, but it was there, clear enough that I couldn't ignore it. The withdrawals lined up with the nights he came home late, the nights he said he had to stay longer, the nights he looked tired in a way that never quite made sense. I sat back and stared at the screen. There was something about the dates that didn't feel random, like they were following a life I wasn't part of. No, I said under my breath, that doesn't mean anything yet. I closed the laptop again. Over the next few days, I kept everything the same. I made breakfast, I asked him about work, I listened while he talked, nodding in the right places, smiling when I was supposed to. If anything, I was more careful than usual, more present, like I was watching a version of my own life from just a little distance. I went to my appointment with Dr. Emily Keller that Thursday. The room smelled faintly clean, something medical mixed with something softer. She wrapped the cuff around my arm and checked my blood pressure, then frowned slightly. "It's a little higher than last time," she said. "Is that a problem?" I asked. "Not right now, but I want you to take it seriously. Stress can affect more than you think." I nodded. "Are you dealing with anything at home?" she asked. "No," I said. The answer came out smooth, like I had already decided it before she asked. She studied me for a moment and then gave a small, understanding smile and continued. A minute later, the sound of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, steady and strong, grounding in a way nothing else was. That night, Ethan sat on the couch watching television, his attention fixed on the screen. I sat beside him, my hands resting on my stomach, and watched him instead. I thought I understood my marriage. I thought I understood him. Now it felt like I was standing inside something built on pieces I'd never seen before. I leaned back slowly, feeling the weight of everything settle in. This was not a mistake. I knew that now. I just didn't know what it really was yet, and that was the part that stayed with me, quiet and steady, waiting. Chapter 2. For the next 2 weeks, I lived like nothing had changed, even though everything already had. I did not ask Ethan anything else about the money. I did not bring it up again. I watched him instead. Every morning, I noticed things I had never paid attention to before. The way he checked his phone before he even poured coffee. The way he avoided eye contact when he said he might be late. The way his voice stayed calm, always calm, like nothing in our life could ever go wrong. Every time he smiled at me, I had to remind myself not to react, not yet, because the truth mattered more than how I felt in the moment. At night, after he fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and went through the numbers again. This time, I lined them up with his work calendar: late meetings, client dinners, off-site visits. I picked a date and checked the withdrawal. It matched. I picked another. It matched too. After a while, it stopped feeling like a coincidence. It started to feel like something structured, something repeated on purpose. I sat there, staring at the screen, my hand resting on my stomach as the baby moved slowly, steady and unaware. I told myself I still needed proof. Patterns were not enough. Patterns could be explained away. So I decided to see it with my own eyes. That Thursday, I told Ethan I was going to bed early. I kept my voice soft, casual. "I'm tired tonight," I said. "The baby has been restless all day." He nodded without really looking at me. "Get some sleep," he said. "I might be late." Of course you will, I thought, but I only smiled and turned away. I went upstairs, turned off the lights, and waited. I listened to him move through the house, the sound of the television, then silence, then the front door closing. I counted slowly in my head, giving him time to leave, giving myself time to decide if I was really going to do this. 10 minutes later, I grabbed my keys and walked out. The night air felt colder than it should have. I got into my car and started the engine, my hands steady, even though my chest felt tight. I found his car 2 blocks away and followed at a distance. Not too close, not too far, just enough to keep him in sight. If he turned around and saw me, everything would end right there. But he did not. He drove toward Anaheim, then turned into a quiet apartment complex, the kind of place you would never notice unless you were looking for it. Rows of identical buildings, dim lights, cars packed into every space. He parked near the entrance and got out like he had done it 100 times. No hesitation, no checking over his shoulder. I parked across the street and stayed inside my car. I told myself to leave. I told myself I already knew enough, but I did not move. 15 minutes later, the building door opened again. He stepped out with a woman. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, wearing jeans and a loose sweater. Her hair was pulled back, messy in a way that looked natural, not careless. They stood close to each other, not awkward, not careful, familiar. He said something and she laughed. It was easy, relaxed, like they had done this before, like this was part of their routine. He reached out and touched her arm without thinking. That was the part that stayed with me, not the fact that he touched her, but how normal it looked. They did not look like a secret. They looked like a life. After a moment, they went back inside together. I sat there staring at the door long after it closed. I expected anger. I expected something sharp, something loud, something that would match what I had just seen. Instead, everything inside me went quiet. It was not an explosion. It was something colder, something that settled in and stayed. After a while, I started the car and drove home. When I walked into the house, nothing had changed. The lights were still off, the couch was still in the same place, the air felt the same. I stood there for a second, trying to understand how 2 completely different realities could exist at the same time. Then I turned off the television and went upstairs. Ethan came home a little after midnight. I kept my eyes closed and listened to him move through the room. He changed, got into bed, and reached for me out of habit, his hand resting lightly against my side. I did not move. The next morning, he kissed my forehead and asked how I was feeling. "Better," I said, "just tired." "You should rest more," he said. "Don't push yourself." I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded. After he left, I went back to the laptop. Seeing it once was not enough. I needed something that could not be denied, something that would hold up no matter what he said. So I started going through our shared documents, bills, statements, anything connected to money. It didn't take long. A lease agreement showed up in a folder it didn't belong in, his name on it, the same address I had seen the night before. The start date went back to 2021. I read it twice, slower the second time. Then I found the electric bill, the internet bill, monthly payments for furniture, appliances, things you only buy if you plan to stay somewhere. This was not random spending. This was a home. I kept going. Grocery charges in a different zip code, small purchases that repeated over time, a pattern of living, not visiting. Then I saw the charges for toys. They were small, easy to miss unless you were looking closely. I stared at them longer than anything else. My hand moved to my stomach without thinking. I didn't let myself cry, not yet. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a second, forcing myself to stay steady, to stay focused. I had spent years believing I understood my marriage. I trusted the version of it I saw every day. Now I was looking at something entirely different, something hidden, something built over time, piece by piece, without me noticing. Later that week, I went to see Dr. Emily Keller again. She checked my blood pressure and frowned slightly. "It's higher than I would like," she said. "Have you been under stress?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "I'm fine." She studied me for a moment like she could see through the answer, then nodded and continued. The baby's heartbeat filled the room a minute later, steady and strong. I focused on that sound and nothing else. On the drive home, everything started to settle into place. The parking lot, the woman, the lease, the bills, the toys. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I understood something clearly for the first time. This was not a mistake. This was not temporary. This was not something that happened by accident. This was a second life. Chapter 3. By that point, I wasn't trying to understand him anymore. I was trying to catch him. The next morning, I called a private investigator. His name was Daniel Brooks. I got his number through a quiet referral, the kind that doesn't come with details, just trust. When he answered, his voice was calm, almost detached. "What exactly are you looking for?" "A timeline," I said. "Where he goes, who he sees, everything he's not telling me." A pause. "Do you believe he's hiding something?" "Yes," I said. "I think he's living a double life." We met that afternoon in his office in Costa Mesa. The place was plain. No photos, no clutter. Just a desk and a man who had probably seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. He read through the notes I brought. Dates, transactions, an address. "You've already done a lot of the work," he said. "I need proof," I replied. "Something that holds up." He nodded once. "I deal in facts, not guesses." That was enough. For the next 3 weeks, my life split in two. During the day, everything looked normal. I answered emails, showed up to appointments, smiled when people asked about the baby. I played my part well enough that no one questioned it. At night, I sat alone at the kitchen table and read his reports. At first, they were simple: times, locations, patterns. Then they started to form something else. Ethan went to the same apartment 3 or 4 nights a week. He stayed overnight, left in the morning, went straight to work. It wasn't random. It was routine. This wasn't a mistake. It was a system. A few days later, Daniel sent a name. Lila Moreno, 32, dental assistant, no marriage record. I read it twice, then again, slower. This wasn't just betrayal. It was something more deliberate, controlled. A few nights later, Daniel called instead of texting. "I have something you should see," he said. "Send it." The photos came through seconds later. The first showed Ethan walking toward the apartment, relaxed, like he belonged there. The second showed the door opening. The third made my chest go still. A little boy ran straight into him. The child wrapped his arms around Ethan's legs without hesitation. Ethan picked him up like it was automatic, like it had happened 100 times before. There was no confusion, no distance, just familiarity. There were more photos, different days, same child, same connection. I stared at the screen, waiting for something inside me to react. Anger, shock, anything. Nothing came. It was quiet. That was the part that scared me. The next morning, I called Daniel. "I need everything documented," I said. "You're getting into serious territory," he replied. "I already am." A pause. "All right," he said. "Give me a few days." When the report came in, it filled in what I had already started to understand. Noah Morano, born in 2019, enrolled in a local school near the apartment, medical records tied to the same address. I pulled up my own timeline. 2019. That was when Ethan started traveling more overnight trips, more excuses that had sounded reasonable at the time. I went back through the financial records. This time, I wasn't looking for large transfers. I was looking for patterns. And there they were: school payments, insurance, small, consistent expenses tied to a child, spread out enough to go unnoticed unless you knew what you were looking for. I leaned back, my hand resting on my stomach. This wasn't just cheating. This was a second life, a hidden one, built carefully over years, running parallel to mine. The more I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't chaos. It was control. A few days later, I went back to the apartment. This time, I knocked. The door opened, and she stood there, the same woman from before. Up close, she looked younger than I expected, tired but not guarded. "Hi," she said. "Can I help you?" "I just have a question about Ethan." She hesitated, then stepped aside slightly. "Okay. How long have you known him?" "A few years," she said. "Why?" "He travels a lot," I said carefully. She gave a small, almost amused smile. "Yeah, he's always busy." "And he's not married." Her expression shifted, not defensive, just confused. "No, he told me he wasn't ready for that." I held her gaze for a second. She didn't know. She was living inside the same lie, just from the other side. "Thank you," I said. "Wait, is something wrong?" I shook my head. "No, I just needed to understand." I walked away before she could ask anything else. By the time I reached my car, one thing was clear. This wasn't just betrayal. It was deception, layered and intentional. That night, I called Daniel again. "I need everything documented," I said. "I'm going to act on this." "Then we do it carefully." The next step was a lawyer. Rachel Carter, family law, Newport Beach. She reviewed everything without interrupting. Photos, reports, financial records. When she finished, she looked at me with a kind of focus I hadn't seen before. "This is significant," she said. "If he used marital assets to support another household, that has serious legal consequences." I didn't look away. "Can we prove it?" She tapped the file. "We're close, but it has to be airtight." I nodded slowly. For the first time, this wasn't just something I had uncovered. It was something I could use, something I could turn into consequences. And once everything was in place, once the truth was no longer just suspicion, but evidence, I wasn't going to confront him. I was going to dismantle everything he thought he had protected. Chapter 4. For 3 weeks, I didn't change anything about the way I treated him. I woke up beside him, made coffee, asked simple questions about his day. I kept everything steady, familiar, predictable. If Ethan sensed anything shifting, he didn't let it show. That was fine. I didn't need him to notice. Behind the surface, everything was already moving. Clara Whitmore handled the legal strategy. She worked quietly, building the case into something precise and structured. Every transaction, every record, every date was placed where it belonged. Marcus Hale tightened the investigation. He confirmed patterns, filled in missing details, and made sure nothing could be dismissed as coincidence. And then there was Leela. The first time we spoke after she learned the truth, she sounded like someone trying to hold herself together. "I didn't know," she said. "I really didn't." "I believe you," I told her. There was a long pause. "He said he wasn't ready for marriage," she said. "He said he needed time to figure things out." I let out a slow breath. "He told me something similar," I said. That was the moment everything shifted for her. A few days later, she agreed to help. She sent messages, call records, screenshots, anything that showed how often he had been there. She confirmed dates, filled in gaps, and added details I would have never known. Placed next to everything else, it wasn't messy. It was clear. From early 2021 through now, the timeline held. There were no breaks, no uncertainty, just a clean record of a double life. By mid-May 2025, everything was ready. Clara set the meeting. Midweek, morning, her office in Irvine. Ethan thought it was a routine financial review. That was what he had been told. Something simple, nothing urgent. He didn't question it. That morning, he moved through the house like nothing had changed. He asked if I needed anything before he left. "No," I said. "I'll see you later." He nodded, casual, unaware. "I won't be long." I waited 10 minutes after he left, then followed. Clara's office was quiet when I arrived. The files were already laid out, organized, deliberate. Marcus stood near the window, reviewing the final notes. "Everything is ready," Clara said. I nodded. "She's coming?" Marcus asked. "Yes," I said. "She'll be here." At exactly 9:30, Ethan walked in. He stopped when he saw me. Then he noticed Clara, the documents, Marcus. His expression shifted, subtle but real. "What is this?" he asked. "Sit down," Clara said calmly. He hesitated, then pulled out a chair. "This was supposed to be a financial meeting." "It is," she replied. He sat, but his eyes stayed on me. "Can you explain what's going on?" I met his gaze. "I've been reviewing our accounts. There are transactions that don't match what you've told me." He exhaled, already defensive. "I told you I've been helping someone. It's temporary." Clara slid a document across the table. "This is a lease agreement," she said, "signed by you." He glanced at it, then shook his head. "It's not what you think." I kept my voice steady. 3 to 4 nights a week, same address, consistent payments over several years. "You're misunderstanding," he said quickly. "It's just a place I use when I'm working late." Marcus placed a set of photos on the table. Ethan didn't touch them at first. "You should look," Marcus said. Slowly, he picked one up. His face changed. "It's not what it looks like," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "It is," I said quietly. "This isn't confusion. This is betrayal." He set the photos down harder than necessary. "This is an invasion of privacy. This is documented evidence, and it supports legal action." Ethan leans back, shaking his head. "You're making this into something it's not. I was helping someone." Before anyone could respond, the door opened. Leela walked in. Ethan turned, confusion flashing across his face. "Leela, what are you doing here?" She didn't answer right away. She stepped closer to the table, her expression steady. "I think you know why," she said. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "Why are you here with them?" She looked at him directly. "How long were you planning to lie?" He blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You told me you weren't married. You let me believe that." His voice dropped. "It's complicated." "No, it's not." She took a breath. "You built a relationship on a lie. You let me build a life around it." Ethan looked between us, his composure slipping. "This is being twisted. You don't understand the situation." Clara placed another file on the table. "Bank records," she said. "Joint funds used to support a second residence. Ongoing expenses tied to that location." Marcus added quietly, "and confirmed presence at that address over multiple years." Leela spoke again, softer now. "And Noah?" she said. "Are you going to explain that too?" Ethan froze. The room went silent. His double life was no longer hidden. It was laid out, piece by piece, with nowhere left to hide. "There's nothing left to explain," I said. He looked at me, searching for something that wasn't there anymore. Clara straightened slightly. "At this point, we are moving forward. The divorce filing has been submitted. Claims related to financial misconduct are included." Ethan stared at her. "You're serious?" I didn't respond. He let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You're going to destroy everything over this?" I held his gaze. This is what happens when a secret family becomes evidence. He looked at me then, really looked at me. For the first time, he wasn't controlling the conversation. He wasn't controlling anything. For years, he had managed both sides of his life, moving between them like nothing could touch him. Now, both of them were in the same room, and neither one was his anymore. He had spent years building something hidden. Now it was all exposed. And this time, I was the one deciding what happened next. Chapter 5. The process did not end in that room. It moved forward slowly, the way things do when they are backed by evidence instead of emotion. Weeks passed, then months. Papers were filed, reviewed, challenged, and answered again. Clara handled every step with precision, making sure nothing could be questioned without a response already waiting. I followed her lead. I showed up when I needed to, signed what was placed in front of me, and listened more than I spoke. I did not rush anything. I did not push. I let the facts carry the weight. Ethan tried to regain control at first. He argued that the money had been temporary help, that it had been misunderstood, that there was no intention behind it. His attorney leaned into every possible angle, trying to soften what had already been proven. But the pattern held. Every transfer, every visit, every record connected too cleanly. It was not a mistake. It was not a moment of weakness. It was a sustained double life, a choice repeated over years. By late August 2025, the court made its decision. It was clear. He had used shared assets to maintain another household. That fact alone shifted everything. Control over financial accounts was restricted. Access was monitored. A significant portion of what we had built together was no longer his to control. It was not loud, but it was justice. When Clara called me after the ruling, her tone did not change. "It is done," she said. I sat in the living room, sunlight stretching across the floor, and let the words settle. "Okay," I said. "How are you feeling?" she asked. I paused. "Clear," I answered. And that was the truth. The rest of it unfolded without me needing to step in. Lila left. She stopped responding to him completely. From what I heard, she moved north, closer to family, taking her son with her and building something separate from everything he had promised her. Ethan's family learned the truth. There was no version of the story left for him to control. Not with the evidence, not with the outcome, not with everything that had already been laid out. His mother, who had once defended him without question, became distant. Conversations shortened. Support faded. Trust does not survive betrayal without changing shape. At work, things shifted as well. He had been in a management role at a logistics firm outside San Diego. It was not public, but internally the situation became known. Financial misconduct raises questions, especially in positions built on responsibility. His role was reduced, authority taken away, influence gone. Not all at once, but enough. He lost the version of himself he had carefully maintained. He reached out a few times during those months. Short messages at first. "We should talk. This is getting out of control. You are overreacting." I did not respond. Later, the tone changed. "Can we fix this? I never meant for it to end like this." I still did not respond. There was nothing left to fix. By early September, I went into labor. It happened in the middle of the night, sudden and undeniable. The hospital was quiet, the kind of silence that makes everything feel sharper. Hours blurred together, voices moving around me, steady and focused. And then he was there. My son. They placed him in my arms, and everything else fell away. All the documents, the court dates, the evidence, the betrayal, it all became distant for a moment. What mattered was right in front of me. Something real. something mine. When I came home a few days later, the house felt different. Not empty, just clear. There were no unanswered questions left in the walls, no tension waiting to surface, no need to check accounts late at night or replay conversations in my head. There was nothing left to guess. That kind of clarity changes you. Weeks passed and life settled into something new. Not the same as before, but steadier. A friend asked me one afternoon, sitting across from me while my son slept beside us. "Do you regret it?" she said. I looked at her, thinking about everything that had led to that moment. Every number I had traced, every record I had reviewed, every choice I had made to stay quiet until I had proof. I shook my head. "No," I said. She waited. "I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because I stopped ignoring what was in front of me." She nodded slowly. "It still feels like revenge," she said. I understood why she thought that. From the outside, it probably looked that way, but it didn't feel that way to me. Revenge is quick, emotional, loud. This was not. This was patient, measured, built on facts. "This wasn't revenge," I said quietly. "This was consequences." She didn't argue, because she knew. I didn't create what happened to him. I revealed it. Everything that followed came from that. Karma does not always arrive all at once. Sometimes it builds quietly, in records, in patterns, in choices that repeat until they can no longer be ignored. And when it finally shows up, it doesn't need noise. It just needs the truth. I still think about how long I lived inside something I did not fully understand. How easy it is to believe the version of reality someone gives you, especially when you want it to be true, and how difficult it is to step back and question it. But once you do, once you start looking at what's actually there instead of what you are told, everything becomes clearer. Not easier, but clearer. People reach out sometimes, asking what they should do when something feels off. They ask if they should trust the explanations they are given, or if they should start looking deeper. I never tell them what to choose, but I tell them this: pay attention to what can be proven. Pay attention to what repeats, because words can change, but patterns do not. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. So if you were in that position, sitting where I once sat, with questions you can't quite answer, what would you choose? Would you trust the explanation, or would you trust the evidence? If this story meant something to you, stay with me, share your thoughts below, and follow along for more stories that might feel a little closer to your own.